So I think there are certain challenges in there. So this risks sovereign borrowing disruptions, breach of contracts lawsuits, loss of investor confidence due to restrictive application, and what have you. Also, Honorable Members of Parliament, we are now in a digital economy where real-time transactions take place. Now, we require the Minister of Internal Affairs to approve any payments that are going to be made by agents of foreigners to foreigners. In a real-time payment, straight through processing, at what point does the Minister of Internal Affairs come in? When we have digital. Unless we're going to say that let's stop digital and go back to manual. Honorable Members of Parliament, it's your judgment. Now, we think that technical incompatibility, the manual ministerial reporting and approval processes are technically incompatible with the velocity of digital finance. Now, then there are other things like the constitutional order, socioeconomic scale. Parliamentary records indicate that approximately 5 trillion shillings in external funding and between 20,000 and 50,000 Ugandan jobs are tied to organizations, and these are currently at risk. Now also the international standings, like the IMF Article 8 of free movement of financial flows, then the East African Community Common Market Protocol on free movement of capital, all this is going to be affected. What happens to these international obligations? And then the risk-based approach that is required for Uganda to stay on the Financial Action Task Force grey list. What happens if we are going to have blanket regulations instead of the risk-based approach that is recommended? So Uganda's obligations set out in various international conventions and treaties with bodies including the IMF, World Bank, IADB, IFC, etc., whose articles of agreement, including those relating to privileges and immunities, are going to be affected by this bill. So what I was, in conclusion, Honorable Chairman, what are the strategic recommendations for the legislative requirement? To ensure that the bill is consistent with Uganda's long-term stability, the Bank of Uganda recommends the following refinements. 1, affirmation of regulatory primacy. Confirm that the Bank of Uganda retains exclusive authority for the regulation and supervision of the financial sector, supported by Financial Intelligence Authority for anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorism matters. These institutions already are operating effectively under well-established statutory mandates, and reaffirming their primacy would preserve the regulatory coherence and accountability, avoid dual licensing and inspection, maintain operational independence, and ensure international compliance. And then also retain government oversight on foreign funding for political parties under the Political Parties Organization Act as amended, which already excludes remittances, legitimate financial transactions, and other cross-border transactions between Ugandan citizens and regulated entities. Then the second recommendation that we are making is the explicit exemption for regulated entities. Categorically exclude financial institutions licensed under the Financial Institutions Act, the National Payment Systems Act, supervised by the Capital Markets Authority, from definition of agent of a foreigner. Such institutions are already subject to rigorous prudential oversight and governance requirements, making additional classification unnecessary and counterproductive. This aligns with the Political Parties Organization Act. And then the revision of the funding thresholds. Maybe replace approval threshold with disclosure-only requirement for transactions undertaken in a normal course of banking. And then also exempt interbank transactions, shareholding arrangements, credit lines, and FDI, touching supervised financial institutions as exempted under the Political Parties Organization Act. And let's narrow the definition of economic sabotage. So redraft clause 13 to exclude legitimate economic research, remove various criminality liabilities for directors as in clause 23 subsection 3, introduce defense of good faith, exercise of mandate, compulsion of statute by law, and then alignment with other existing frameworks. Again, channel all oversight through the Financial Intelligence Authority. So, and we also request that maybe you clarify the bill's relationship with the existing financial laws. How do they relate with the FIA, AMLA, NPS Act, PPO, to avoid redundant or conflicting reporting lines? So in conclusion, Chairman, true national sovereignty is built on economic strength and financial independence. While the goal of protecting national interests is legitimate, the protection of the Sovereign Bill 2026 as currently drafted risks reversing 3 decades of successful financial development through liberalization that has sustained economic growth. By adopting these technical refinements, we believe that Parliament can safeguard the nation